Welcome to Covenant Communications Audio Library. We are pleased to present Tennis Shoes Adventure Series, Gadiantons and the Silver Sword, written and narrated by Chris Heimerdinger. We hope you enjoy the presentation.
In the center was the blackened trunk of a lightning-scarred tree, marking the very pinnacle of the hill, jutting skyward to remind us the direction of heaven. I saw a man standing there as well, a product of the mist. His head was hoary, his features olive and aquiline, and his garments reminiscent of an ancient age. Earnestly he beckoned me toward him, as if nothing else mattered, as if I was his last hope. I began walking, but I never seemed to arrive. Despite my determination, I couldn't reach him. This was my only dream of the night. Saturday, August 8th, 3 weeks before returning to BYU to face my junior year, the same night as the accident. Chapter 1. You know what frustrates me about girls? They're like pound cake in a hot oven. If you open the oven too soon by letting them know you like them or some terrible thing like that, then you've got yourself a tortilla instead of a cake. My problem is I ain't much of a cook. This girl had been hitting on me for weeks. Every morning I'd pass by her window on the way to my 9 o'clock class. She'd be patiently perched behind a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios, waiting for me to pop into view. She'd wink and I'd smile the cool smile, walking by with my pectorals pumped higher than natural. I looked forward to this game every morning. She rivaled the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen, long hair black as ebony, and stormy eyes with a shine like a distant lighthouse. I lay awake some nights wondering how I might influence fate and meet her. Fate was good to me one Friday after my American Heritage class. I was walking through the Wilkinson Center when, lo and behold, she was seated behind the courtesy phones. I moved in for the kill. "Well, hi," I called over. She looked up with a blank, confused expression as if she'd never seen me before. Awkwardly, I identified myself. "I live in the other ward at King's Court Arms." No response. I pass by your window in the mornings." "Oh, you do?" She didn't fool me. She knew darn well who I was. I introduced myself as the notorious Jim Hawkins. Her name was Renee Fenimore, and she was free that night. I went all out. New wardrobe, a splash of my roommate's polo, flowers, dinner at Maggleby's, Sundays at Carousel, topped off by a starry night drive to Utah Lake and around the Provo Temple. For all that, a guy might feel he deserves a goodnight kiss. I was a little disappointed when she slipped inside her apartment without so much as a handshake. I'd have gone to bed sulking if I hadn't heard her sultry voice beckon me back. Renee leaned out the door, hair dancing with the soft October breeze, and blew me a kiss. The kiss hit me hard. In fact, I think it knocked me unconscious because I don't remember driving home. I guess I got a little overambitious. By the third date, she must have seen the Moroni spire in my eyes because her attitude grew real chilly. She sat me down in the Cougar Eat and flogged me with a speech about moving too fast, feeling overwhelmed, dating other people, and I was too busy sweeping pieces of my heart off the floor to hear the rest. Afterwards, I punched myself in the mirror. I knew better. I'd only played this dating game for 6 years, well, 4 if you subtract my mission, but still, anybody knows you don't call a girl every night at first. They think you got no taste, like you could fall in love with anybody. Can I help it if I recognized a good thing from the start? As time slipped by, I'd pretty much consigned myself that if Renee and I had signed a marriage contract in the pre-existence, the angels had torn it in half. I was just getting ready to let my heart brave the elements again when I learned that my roommate, Andrew, had asked Renee to homecoming, and she'd had the nerve to accept. Andrew! Of all people, Andrew Southwick was the most obnoxious roommate I ever had. What I somewhat narrow-mindedly labeled a California money Mormon who let you smell his wealth in everything he wears, says, or drives. All the apartment amenities were his, the VCR, the TV, the microwave, the CD. Of course, we could use his stuff any time we wanted, as long as there wasn't something he wanted to watch, listen to, or cook. Then he'd toss someone else's sandwich out of the microwave and replace it with his own. In one respect, Andrew reminded me of an old childhood friend of mine named Garth Plimpton. Both had practically committed to memory every church book ever printed, though their conclusions about such things were quite different. The only time I found Andrew even remotely entertaining was when our apartment engaged in intellectual conversations about the gospel, which was almost nightly. Andrew always played devil's advocate, a role where he seemed quite at home. When I got off my mission, I'd sworn I knew everything about the gospel. But Andrew trumpeted controversies most anti-Mormons never knew existed. He got our heads so twisted in our words we'd just throw up our hands and parrot, "All I know is the church is true," which of course sated Andrew's ego all the more. I used to wish Garth were around at moments like these. Certainly he'd pondered all the same issues, seeking answers with a little different spirit. Andrew seriously needed a slice of humble pie. But Garth was far across the country, a busy undergrad in archaeology at Harvard. My roommate, Lars Packard, was a different egg altogether. Though he and I never bucked heads, so to speak, I still put him in the category of the weirdest roommate I ever had. Lars was a UFO nut. All over his room were posters and clippings of flying saucers, aliens, documented sightings, Easter Island, you name it. If it had to do with close encounters between humans and little green men, Lars was the resident expert. He belonged to UFO clubs all over the country. During gospel conversations, he'd often chime in with a view more off the wall than all of ours put together, always trying to tie extraterrestrials and the gospel together. Lars was bizarre, but at least he was docile. He spent most of the time in his room, reading or playing with his computer. He'd never served a mission, at least not yet. And if he went to church, it wasn't in our student ward. He zipped home to see his family in Sandy, Utah every weekend. My obituary would have read, "Jim Hawkins died of insanity his junior year at BYU," if it hadn't been for Benny. Benny Burns and I had become good friends the previous winter semester. His only flaw was that he was too much like me. I suffered from the same ailment Joseph Smith once tagged onto himself during those obscure days before translating the Book of Mormon. He diagnosed it as levity. What I had was a worse case of the same disease, that is, the tendency to take nothing in life seriously, not even church. Unfortunately, Benny had the same problem. During the first few months of my junior year, being around Benny, my attitude became more and more cynical, my sense of humor more and more off-color, and my convictions more and more lax. In spite of this, would you believe they called me to the Elders Quorum presidency? I was the worst second counselor in history. I probably went home teaching once all semester, and that was only because I heard she was cute. Part of the problem was assigning Benny as my companion. He spent all his extra hours cultivating a year-old romance with a brunette named Allison. So we let the months slip by and justified the whole thing by saying students didn't want to be home taught anyway. Every better habit I thought I'd frozen solid in my psyche during my mission to Oregon appeared to be crumbling. It was becoming a real struggle to read scriptures anymore, or even pray every other night. 3 hours in church seemed an eternity. Sometimes I'd just take the sacrament and go home. I knew my attitude was horrible, but I couldn't seem to muster the energy to turn things around. I guess I thought I needed to get married. That would be the perfect excuse to end my gospel vacation. Thanksgiving was only 4 days away. A big family reunion was scheduled in my hometown, Cody, Wyoming. My oldest brother, Mitch, and his family were flying out from Virginia. My second oldest brother, Stephen, and his family were driving over from Lovell. And the newlyweds, my third oldest brother, Judd, and his new wife, Crystal, would be driving down from Billings. Uncle Spence and Aunt Louise would be there. Even my little sister, Jenny, the BYU sophomore, was adding to the crowd by bringing home a new boyfriend. The timing was all too perfect. I desperately needed to breathe the old homestead air again and reorient my bearings. That's why I was so taken back, so dumbfounded, when I called home and got such an unexpected reaction. My mother picked up the receiver. "Hey, how's my favorite mom?" "Jamie," Mom confirmed. She was the only person on earth allowed to address me by my true given name. "Hey, just calling to let you know we'll be leaving here about 10 Wednesday morning, so don't expect us till around 6. Unless I drive the whole way, in which case we should be there for lunch." "Jamie," Mom interrupted. Her voice was unusually tense. "Maybe you shouldn't come home." "Excuse me?" I said, hoping my mother had developed a sense of humor similar to mine and was thus giving me a taste of my own medicine. "There are people looking for you. Were you into something last summer?" My mother was truly shaken up. "What are you talking about?" "Like drugs, or I know you wouldn't be involved in anything like that, but maybe you made some people angry." I couldn't believe I was hearing this. Mom, you're sounding crazy. I don't have the foggiest... My dad came on the line. Jim? Dad, what's going on? Some men came to the house, he explained. One on Friday and 3 others less than an hour ago. They were looking for you. What for? Jim, please, don't hold out on us. Your mother is very frightened. Dad, I promise I have absolutely no idea. The one on Friday acted friendly enough in the beginning. We told him you were off at school and would be home for Thanksgiving. He asked when Thanksgiving was, which was odd enough. But when we asked for his name so we could pass on any messages, he walked off, refusing to answer. Did he say what he wanted? No. Jim, think. For your mother's sake, who are these people? I couldn't even begin to guess, Dad. The men tonight also wanted to know your whereabouts, but this time we wouldn't tell them. The one who knocked asked a very unusual question. He asked if you owned a sword. A what? A metal sword, Dad repeated. Then he gave us a warning. It almost sounded like a threat. He said if the first man returned, we should kill him, not send him away, not have him arrested. He said kill, and he meant it. We've called the police. The first man was seen watching the house last night. Dad, this is insane. What am I supposed to do? Don't misunderstand us, son. We want you to come home. We just don't want to see you hurt. Did they threaten to hurt me? Well, no. Did they threaten you? Not exactly. Were they carrying any weapons? No, son, but Dad, I need to come home. There was silence on the line. I won't tell you not to come, Jim. I just wish we could get to the bottom of this beforehand. Well, the only way to do that may be if I do come home. What do they look like? Can you describe them? Indian, Dad answered. Not quite like the ones around here, but the first one was even dressed like one.